In this video, I want to show you a very useful tool that is very popular in pyRevit. You probably already know about this tool, but for the sake of making these tutorials, I kind of really want to show how they exactly work and their potential. So let me show you something that is a concept. It's a very familiar concept to you guys that use calculators a lot. Standard calculators have three buttons that are very famous. The M-, M+, and MR. Let's say you have 78. You can add it to the memory, and then you can type in another number, 12, and also add that to the memory, and then read the results back. This is specifically helpful because this is a very simple application, or if it's a physical calculator, is a very simple tool. So this limited memory system helps you do operations in here. Let's say, I don't know, 75 plus 3 equals 78. Add that to the memory, and then 10 plus 2 equals 12. Also add that to the memory, and then read the results back. So it kind of gives you another level of complexity when working with such a simple interface. Revit's selection interface is kind of similar to how a calculator works. It's very simple. There are only a handful of ways that you can select a series of objects in Revit. Let's say I want to select these walls on the two sides of the north and the south side of the building, and also the plumbing fixtures that are sitting between these two bathrooms. If you go about it this way and select, basically do a big selection over these. Sorry, I'm using a Mac keyboard. Okay, so there you go. So I have these walls, this wall selected, and I want to do this wall as well. And then I know that I've probably selected a bunch of other objects as well, and I can go to filter. If you didn't notice that, I have the habit of clicking on this filter at the corner of the screen. Just click on it, and then I can go filter for the walls and just select these two walls. But then I also wanted to do this, the plumbing fixtures that are inside that room. So going back to the way that I selected it, if I do this and this, in order to grab those, I also need to do this, right? So add them to my selection so I can filter them later. But now if I do filter for plumbing fixture on walls at the same time, I also get the walls that are here, which I don't want. The solution that I've come up with, the problem, I'm sure you people that have a lot of experience working with Revit have seen this problem in many different ways before. So the solution that I came up with is to use the same concept that calculator uses to play with this sort of like a selection memory. So to do this, for example, I'm going to do the actual selection, the first selection that I had, and I'm going to filter it for the walls only. So I'm going to basically divide the selection process into multiple steps. And the tools that we talked about are here in this stack. There is memory append, memory write, which is really a memory overwrite. So if you have a memory already saved in, this will overwrite it and would clear it. And then memory read, which will read the memory back. So I have a bunch of walls selected. I'm going to click on memory write. This effectively writes these objects into the memory, the walls that I've selected. Now I can cancel my selection completely. I can do another selection box somewhere else. I can filter that for, let's say, plumbing fixtures, and I can append that also to the memory, right? Okay, so these two sets of objects are now in memory. Now if I click on mread, which is the memory read, it actually reads those objects back for me. So see, now I have the walls on top and bottom on north and south side, and the plumbing fixtures that are here. And I don't have the extra, unnecessary wall staff. So if you click on filters now you have the exact number of objects that you wanted to select. One of the other nice thing about this is that I have this selection in memory saved already. So I can go into a different view, and also, let's say I want to select all the plumbing fixtures in this view as well. So I'm just going to do that. And I'm going to append that to the memory as well. So now when I read the memory back, it reads the previous objects plus all the plumbing fixtures that are in this view. See, if I switch to the other view, all these objects are also still selected. This will give you enormous powers in selecting exactly the right amount of objects that you need to select. Let's say you want to move a wall with all the dimensions and all the other objects that are associated to it, or you have a building that has multiple wings. You want to be able to move one wing independently of the other. This tool will give you the ability to go between different views and select a bunch of objects and add them to the memory and then read them back later, being sure that you have selected the right amount of objects, basically. So the next logical step for this is that, okay, so I have these objects selected and I can memory read basically right now and then, do whatever task that I want to do with them. There are a couple of other tools that are associated with the system that I've placed under the memory stack. Memory clear clears the memory. Memory deduct deducts the selected objects from the memory. So let's say I had this wall selected in the memory, right? So if I do memory read, it would select that wall. Now I want to select that wall again. And I want to say memory deduct. So it would remove that wall effectively from the memory. So now if I do a memory read, you won't that get object selected anymore. And there is purge memory files. This will delete the temporary memory files that are created on the machine. You don't ever need to worry about this. pyRevit at every startup cleans up its own template files, its own temporary files, I'm sorry. So it really cleans up after itself. You don't really need to worry about it as much. This is mostly a developer tool, basically. And then this is the most important one, that is basically the next logical step after having your object selected. If you know that you're going to need the exact same number of objects later, you can save memory as a selection. And when you click on this, it basically saves it as a selection. I should probably add a prompt to this that this selection has been saved. But where they go is, if you go under View and you go under Filters, this is how Revit basically saves a series of objects. You can see that the selection filters, there's a saved selection for sample project at that timestamp. So now this is the set of objects that you have selected. So now I can go and rename that to walls and fixtures, let's say. And then you can use this later in the visibility graphics settings in your filters to add that over here and do visibility graphic changes and stuff like that to it. So in this term, I'm going to just turn them off. It's a really good set of tools that would give you enormous amounts of power in selecting the right amount of objects that you want to be selected for your next action. The last piece of information that is incredibly important is that these memory tools are project independent. Or I should say project dependent. Sorry, they're project dependent. It means that if you have 5 different projects open in Revit right now and you switch between them and you use these tools, the memory, the selection memory for each project is independent of any other project, basically. So if I'm on this project, it says sample project 1, and if I open a new, let's say I want to open a new project, a completely different model, and I do a selection of a bunch of walls. So I should create these. Okay, and I'm going to do that. Select these walls, and I'm going to add it to my memory, right? See, if I'm using mWrite, it basically overwrites the memory, right? So if I do mRead, it reads them back. Now, if I switch my project and go to the other one and say mRead, this doesn't give me an error. See, it reads the objects that belong to this project. So that's really what I'm saying was by this selection memory is project dependent. So each project has its own selection memory. This way you don't ever need to worry about overriding your selections when you're switching between these projects in the same session.